The vest was about the expectation on women, the exhausting demand to be small but not so small, to no matter what you do, you have a career, how dare you not have kids? You have kids, how dare you not have a career? You wait to consider getting married. You're a crone. You got married young. You must have been dumb and you didn't know what you were doing. It's just, we can't quite get it right. I'd tried to make everybody happy. I'd lost my individual way.
New year, new you. How about true you? In this best of episode of My Legacy, hosts Martin Luther King III, Arndrea Waters King, Marc Kielburger, and Craig Kielburger look back on the conversations that reveal what it really means to tell the truth about who you are and stand in it, even when it's hard or messy. We'll hear from Marie Forleo on why success starts with being yourself, Jemele Hill on how courage isn't planned, it's revealed, Sterling K. Brown on stepping off the expected path to set yourself free, Sophia Bush on letting go of others' expectations to live your own best life. First up, Sarah Jakes Roberts on how embracing her truth became her greatest calling.
Sarah, becoming a mom at 14, I'm sure that was a lot of judgment, a lot of pressure, expectations, especially when you look at it within the faith community, right?
Yeah.
So what do you remember around that in that moment, and how do you feel it shaped you and your legacy moving forward?
14 is such a young age to become a mother that I think to properly contextualize it, you have to understand that I was not afraid of being pregnant or having a baby. I thought I was going to get in trouble. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get grounded, or my parents are going to be so upset. It wasn't until I saw their response that I began to realize that this is much bigger than like you got in trouble, like your life has completely changed. But to my mom's credit, one of the things she told me, she's like, I didn't get rid of my babies. I didn't give them away. Whatever you decide to do, I'm going to stick with you every step of the way. And she did that. And man, there were so many moments where I felt like the pregnancy just solidified this idea that I don't belong in that family. So if you go back to that image of me as a little girl being confused and amazed, I think in that moment it was solidified, like, oh my goodness, you don't belong here. And so it became so easy for me to kind of move into the background. But I think in moving into the background that it also gave me an opportunity to discover my identity outside of my family name. It's like I'm already the black sheep. I'm already disconnected. Now I get to just kind of figure out who I am and what I want to do with my life. And though my life has certainly had some twists and turns, even since having the pregnancy, I found a real sense of being okay with myself without the validation of other people, because I'd lost it in many ways. And the moment that I began to really say, you know what, this is my story, I'm going to love it, I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to wake up each day and really do the best that I can, I began to see my life change for myself. And so I started writing this blog just about me. I was in this toxic marriage, and I was like, you know what, my life is unraveling and I'm going to help it come undone by telling these stories on this blog. And people started gravitating towards my message, like, oh my gosh, that's me. You took the words that I couldn't say. Oh my gosh, this is what I would pray to God if I could pray these things. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not ministry. Like, this is just me telling my story. I can't be in ministry. I'm a teen mom. And so I wrote this blog post where I was like, I'm going to just let everybody know that I'm a teen mom so they can stop putting that pressure on me. It kind of backfired because they were like, oh my goodness, now that I know that you have a story too, now I trust you even more.
And Sarah, when I think of your ministry, when I think of Women Evolve, it has been built on this radical transparency. Like, you have redefined what it means to be a woman of faith based on radical transparency. Your past, your marriage, you're sharing your stories. Why has it been so important for you to be this radically transparent with all those who look to you?
You know, I don't know that I saw it as radical when it started. Like I said, I kind of thought that if I told people, they would be like, oh my goodness, we'll leave her alone and it won't be a thing. But the more that I realized how many of us are suffering in silence, the more I felt like if I can tell my story and it helps someone else, then I'll tell it one more time. And if it helps someone else, I'll tell it another time. And I think what I have learned is that through isolation, the darker voices, the harder voices, the meaner voices that we hear in our head, they're louder. And until you hear someone say, like, hey, I felt that too, but I'm telling you, it wasn't always like that, or that I found a flicker, that it gives someone permission to start looking for light even in their dark seasons. And I didn't want to be in ministry. I didn't have this as like a goal in my heart. And so I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to at least be honest. I don't want anyone to ever be surprised that because I preached a message that I experienced depression, that I worked at a strip club. Like, I want you to know, like, this is what you're getting. It is not much, but I am going to give my best. I'm going to share my best. And if I make you feel less alone, then girl, we could grab arms and move towards better together. But I didn't want to live on a pedestal. I wanted to be able to, sometimes on my social media, I'll be like all glammed up, dressed up. Other moments I'll literally be snatching my wig off and washing my face. This is all of who I am. And I just don't want people to be connected to this caricature. I don't want to be trapped in my own life. And so for me, my honesty has been my freedom. My honesty has been the runway that allows me to not feel stuck in this life. And I think because of that, my prayer is that I'll continue to have endurance for what is ahead, because I don't have to figure out, how do I keep this mask up? How do I keep this facade going? My greatest question is, how do I continue to be honest in a way that reaches the most unlikely person?
Marie, I wanted to ask you a question. You know, it was many years ago when you were 23 years old, you had the courage to launch Marie TV when many women at that time were not creating that type of content. And that was courageous, that was audacious, that was wonderful, and obviously been now very successful. I'm sure there's been lots of ups and downs in that process. But how did you find your confidence and trust in yourself to go ahead and to create that vision, to create that platform, to create that voice?
I was born in 75, so it was kind of growing up in the 80s there. And my idea of a successful, powerful businesswoman had like huge shoulder pads, and she was in this corner glass office. That was kind of imagery that I think I just saw in the media. And I had this notion that one had to be perfectly educated and speak at a particular level and use particular language in order to be successful. And I remember being on Wall Street, on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and trying to kind of step into my idealized image of what a successful young woman was. And I tried to do that in the magazine world, both on the advertising side and the editorial side, and kind of all these different beautiful opportunities that were career opportunities. But I kept feeling completely disconnected because I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And so after feeling like a failure and leaving jobs, even though I had a very strong work ethic and I was never afraid of hard work, I couldn't deny from a soul level that I wasn't where my soul wanted me to be. And the moment that I relaxed and said, you know what? I don't speak perfectly. I graduated from college. I was the first in my family to go to college, but I don't have higher degrees. I am way far from perfect. I'm quirky. I'm weird. I have a strange sense of humor. I like all of these different things. And I started just expressing the true essence of who I am. That's actually when things started to come together. So releasing this notion of perfection, releasing this notion of having to be someone that I genuinely wasn't, that was the only place it came from, that and just a lot of pain of failure of trying to be something I wasn't, and it did not work out.
You taught me so many amazing things, and I want you to share with us one of the coolest things that you've taught me that I love, and just explain this to our viewers in the way that you do, because you're such a great storyteller, which is observe, don't absorb.
Yeah, I think, first of all, this is really, really helpful, especially for those of us who are empaths, those of us who are really also sensitive to energy, those of us who tend to also have people in our lives that, let's say, have different kind of energy that is not necessarily a good chemistry match for you. So the notion of observing and not absorbing. And I'll just say this. For especially what my life has been like these past couple years, family, we love them. And then sometimes same thing like Josh and I, you need to shake each other because you're like, I gotta get away. Same thing can happen in our work environments and with our friendships. So I think observing someone, it's like observing what they're going through, having ultimate compassion for what they're experiencing, being there in terms of listening, mirroring what they're going through without absorbing it into your own energetic field, taking it on, becoming responsible for fixing it, for figuring it out, or thinking that you are necessarily the cause of this other person's distress or upset or stress, even if they tell you that you are. So, I have been through this most recently. And again, my mom, God bless her, she's still with us. She's struggling a lot right now. And, she said some things in the past little stretch of time that were extremely hurtful and some might say cruel. I've shared some things with Chris and she was like, whoa, that's a lot. And so it comes back to this notion of me going like, and I can observe her in her pain. I can observe her what she's experiencing, which is a lot of terror and a lot of fear and a lot of loss of control. And I can empathize with the notion of what she's experiencing and how those lash outs might be directed at me if I'm in her presence. But I don't have to absorb it and take it on. I don't need to be a sponge. And I don't need to, as painful as this is, as the daughter of the woman who taught me that everything is figure outable, I don't have to figure it out for her, nor is that my role. I can trust at a very deep level that there is, for me, and this is my own belief system, there is a higher power watching over her. She is on her own soulful and spiritual journey. And the greatest gift I can give both her and myself is to show up, and Chris taught me this one, only love in the room, meaning bringing only love in the room. Can I observe her and not absorb that negativity? Can I observe her and not absorb her pain and her fear as my own?
Scrolling won't change your life, but subscribing just might. Tap that button and stay connected to conversations that can't. I am enough of a fan of yours that I did actually at one point watch one of your films and go, gosh, is he a classically trained actor? Did he study Shakespeare? And I remember Googling your background and going, what? He went to Stanford for economics and then worked at the Federal Reserve. Like that I did not expect as a background. So when did acting move from a hobby to a calling for you?
Sure. So I acted all during high school, from St. Louis, Missouri, and had a great time doing it, but didn't know or consider it to be a practical pursuit. I got into Stanford University and they had the #1 econ program. And I was like, great. I was in a program called Inroads for minority students interested in business and industry. I had an internship at the Federal Reserve Bank. And for 2 years, I had like a pretty clearly set path, right? I was going to get out. I'd probably go into investment banking. I do all right. I had to make a contribution to my family. I always thought that a pursuit of the arts was something for people who didn't have to make a financial contribution to their families or their community, et cetera. It was a privilege that I was not afforded in my mind. Got to Stanford University, and I was living in one of the ethnic theme houses, the African American theme house called Ujima,
Yep.
which they thought meant unity, but it actually means cooperative economics is one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. Well, we tried. It was the 70s. We're trying to figure stuff out. Anyway.
And by the way, they're still touting that. We were just touring Ujima
a couple of weeks ago.
And they're like, Sterling and his wife. I mean, like that is
Yeah.
that
Oh,
is
get
part
outta here.
that is
That was-
part of
You're a legend.
The legend. Yeah, so sorry, keep going.
That's the lore. My
Yeah.
wife and I lived in that dorm
That's
freshman
exactly.
year together.
Yeah.
We did our first play together. And it was the first time, because I went to this college prep school, first time getting a chance to play a part that was specifically African American. I'd done Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller and all these sorts of things, Shakespeare, but like to do the words of August Wilson. And the play Joe Turner Come and Gone has this man is trying to reunite his daughter with her mother because he gets taken away from his family and put in a chain gang. And I had a wonderful time during the show. And Professor Elon, who was a Black man at Stanford, who directed the play, and he said, listen, I know you don't plan on majoring in this, but I think that the department gets a lot from your involvement in it, and I think you get something out of it as well. So why don't you just keep auditioning for plays? And that's what I did. And after 2 years of doing that, I said, oh, this thing that I think is a hobby is actually the calling. My grades in econ would go up and all my other classes would go up anytime I was doing a play because I was doing something that fed my soul. And I wasn't following a path that I thought I was supposed to be on, that other people thought I was supposed to be on. I was on the path that I was supposed to be on because God told me. And I went to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm thinking about changing my major. And she said, okay. I said, I'm thinking about changing it to acting.
Did she
And
tell
she
you
said what I knew she
the
would
black
say.
lady fall out? Oh.
And she said, Andrew, she goes, did you pray about it? And I said, yes, ma'am, I did. And she said, and this is the way you feel led? And I said, yes, ma'am, I do. And she has been one of my staunchest supporters from that
Oh, I
moment on.
love that.
Like hasn't missed a play, etc. She now has been living with ALS for the past 8 years or so. But up until that point, she was everywhere that I was on in a performance.
So beautiful.
Geraldine, you've called Reverend Beckwith a spiritual mentor. When you first heard his teachings, what immediately resonated with you?
Oh, wow, this is so interesting because I think there are things that when I was first introduced to agape through my wife, Ryan Michelle Bethay, who went there first, and coming from a very sort of like fundamentalist Christian background, it was interesting because I was like, "What is this dude talking?" Right? There's certain things that are like just sort of like not necessarily what I was accustomed to. And then I had to listen with new ears. Is as in the Bible says, give me ears to hear, eyes to see, and a heart of understanding. And there was nothing but love that was coming from out of his mouth. That's all I could hear. I was hearing about ways to connect with people. I was hearing about this sort of false illusion of separation and scarcity, and it sort of melted away. And I was in the congregation, and hymns would be playing, and people would be dancing, and they would be fully self-expressed. And there would be people like who came from a very black church background, and they were hitting the beat and they were jamming and grooving. And then there were people from a very different background, and their dancing was very flowy and moving and everything like this. And I said, how beautiful is this that everybody can be in this space together and express themselves as they are, authentically, fully, truly. And I saw the division that I thought existed melted away. And I was able and free to just love people as they are. I think that is the greatest gift that the Rev has sort of led me in this journey, is to love people unconditionally. And I don't even think we recognize how many conditions we place on our love until you get a chance to see it at the 60,000 foot view and be like, oh, wow, I actually had more judgment than I was conscious of. Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow,
That is just
it's a
beautiful.
beautiful description of agape, man, and your experience. That's beautiful.
Thank you, Rev. You're beautiful too, man. What are you talking about?
You talk about courage, and I want to reflect on what that courage has meant because, very famously in 2018, you called out President Trump's racism. You called out Jerry Jones, his stance on players taking a knee. And that ultimately cost you your job. That's courage. And so when you talk about courage, when you reflect back on that time, what did that teach you about your voice? What did that teach you about your values? And frankly, what did it teach you about your willingness to risk it all for what you believed in?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people who have been in far more dangerous positions than that one, especially as, with you all being so intimately acquainted with the civil rights movement, is that you don't know if you're going to meet the moment until the moment finds you. You have no idea. So if you would have asked me before that actually happened, hey, if this was the scenario, what would you do? You think you know what you would do. You think you know how you might respond, but you don't really actually know till you're right there in the fire. And so all of the decisions that I made as the, White House called for me to be fired, as, Donald Trump singled me out on social media, as that was happening, I'm making mental decisions in real time. And I had to sort of have a few moments with myself and saying like, okay, if this results in you being fired, like right in this moment, what are you going to do? Or if they put it on the table, hey, either apologize to the president or you're going to have to leave here. What are you going to do? And every instinct and every cell in my body was like, if they ask me to apologize to the president, I'm not going to do it. And I made that clear very early. I'm never apologizing to him. I said what I said. And we just got to live with that. The other part of it too is like knowing that, hey, if this is the end of the road right here, I didn't leave ESPN until a year later, and I left on my own terms. And if at the moment they had to make a business decision, I would have lived with it. I mean, it wouldn't feel good, especially given all the work that I put in to get to that point. And there's not many people who get the opportunity to anchor the 6 o'clock Sports Center, one of the sort of treasured time slots at ESPN. But if that was the result, that was the result. And at the, when stuff like this happens where your integrity and your character is questioned, you have to be able to live with yourself. And I would not have been able to live with myself had I capitulated in a way that I think would not have spoke to who authentically I am. So it was a lot of lessons that I found out in real time, and just because the situation was there. And I'm thankful for that, because when similar situations, maybe not always involving the president of the United States, but when other tests of your character, your integrity, when those things happen, it's muscle memory. Now you're confident because you've already done it. And I've done it at a level that most people don't get to do it at. And so when I'm in meetings or in determining business relationships and things pop up where you have to stand on something, I'm so much more comfortable doing that because I've already done it before. It's very similar to an athlete. I mean, I'm sure Michael Jordan missed a lot of game-winning shots before he actually made them. And when he finally made one, it became muscle memory. And then after that, that dude was never losing. So I sort of approach it with the mentality that an athlete might.
So even before that happened, let's also go back to your beginning days of ESPN. Because as you mentioned earlier, you found yourself in rooms where you were, most times one, if not the only woman, certainly probably the only Black woman. So if we're talking about legacy on this show, and you at ESPN early 2000s, that legacy is there. But you said about that time that it is both isolating and yet motivating. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about what you mean by that?
So the isolating part is when I was a sports columnist at the Orlando Sentinel. This would have been in 2005 and most of 2006. I was the only Black female sports columnist at a daily newspaper in North America. And notice I didn't just say America, right? So that's one out of 405 newspapers. And that is an embarrassing statistic for the profession of journalism. And a lot of people might have thought that that would have given me some sense of accomplishment. It did not. What it was communicating to me, and even worse, communicating to other women who might want to get in the business, is that your voices aren't necessary, nor are they valued. And so that's the isolating part. And, it also comes with a lot of scrutiny because you're the only one. And a lot of Black people have been in this situation in all industries, is that when you're the only one, you then become the test case, right? So you have to carry yourself a certain way because you are living with the burden of, if I mess up, no one else is coming after me. Mm-hmm. Black people aren't perfect, right? So it's like, if I make some junior mistakes or whatever, if that's the reason why you won't see value in Black women having voices in the sports space, then that to me reflects more on you than it does on me. So you're carrying all of this, but at the same time, getting to ESPN, a place that is considered to be, for our profession, at the very top, if you're in sports media, being the most powerful sports media company in America, then, there's something to be celebrated by being able to advance and take that step and realize that all the hard work has brought you to this place and brought you to this sense of elevation. But it's always, to me, about who is able to come behind you as a result. Now, ESPN is in a very different position because they can hire whoever they want. And you look at their team picture, and it's very diverse because they have a lot of women. And even before I got there, Robin Roberts was the one who set the table, And so they've always had a steady pipeline of women of color and putting them in certain positions. Where I was a little bit different is that they were traditional anchors, and I was one of the few that were able to develop a foothold and an imprint at ESPN by giving my opinion, by creating conversation based off my perspective and my experience, that I had as a sports journalist over the course of many years. So I was very thrilled to be there, but I also was fully aware that if I walk into one more room and I'm the only one in there, that's not a good room. It's like I've never been one of those people, and there unfortunately are some people of color who are like this, that they do want to be the only one in the room. I don't want to be the only one in the room because I don't know everything. I don't represent the entire totality of women, of Black women. I do not do that. And so it's important that we all, when we go in these rooms, that it's not just about getting in the room, it's about getting in the room and kind of breaking it up and opening the door even wider so that more of us, so it's a flood of us coming in.
I loved when Kamala Harris said, upon accepting the vice presidency, I might be the first, but I won't be the last. I love that sentiment. And so here you are at, ESPN, seemingly from the outside, riding on top of the world. Then you had this unfair attack and this fall from where you had worked so hard to be. But throughout all of that, Ian was there. And he, walked with you through that storm and was always at your side. So my question is for you, Ian, and particularly for couples that are listening right now, and if they're going through the storm, they're watching someone that they love go through the storm, what advice would you have for couples walking that path?
I believe communication is the key. Constant communication. When when she was going through her storm, really, first and foremost, I wanted to make sure that I was there and she felt my presence and she knew that she wasn't alone. We had a lot of good times, and that was probably the most challenging part of our relationship up to that point. So my biggest thing was making sure that she didn't feel alone, making sure that she felt my presence and we were going to get through this together. And naturally, I'm a fixer. So sometimes I have to dial that back because sometimes she may just want to vent and she just needs a listening ear versus, solution after solution. But my goal was to remain positive throughout the entire situation because I knew something good would come from it. And a lot of things came from it that were good on a positive note. So just positivity and communication would be my advice to any couples going through any type of turmoil.
Yeah, and I remember when I got suspended, so I had a 2-week suspension. I think I spent the first week with you, right? That to me said a lot about our relationship, is that my immediate instinct after I got suspended was I need to hop on the plane and I need to be with him, right? Because I knew that the comfort I was looking for, I knew the solace I was looking for, I knew all of that could be found in him. And, that spoke volumes about our, relationship. And I know it probably wasn't the easiest from you in the sense of that, here you have me being discussed on all these news channels. And, he's also in the corporate world. So you have colleagues that are watching this.
Well, the challenge for me was, under normal circumstances, if I was dating a regular woman, if she got into an issue with someone at work, I would just go up there and have a conversation with that guy. But with it being the president of the United States, I was a little handcuffed. So it was a little challenging for me. So, and that's another thing, we have fun. So making her laugh and just making her feel comfortable.
Sophia, now I want to turn to a deeply personal essay that you wrote in Glamour last April about your coming out journey. And I want to read something that you wrote because I thought that it was just so very powerful. So I want to quote your exact words, which is, I finally feel like I can breathe. I don't think I can explain how profound that is. I feel like I was wearing a weighted vest for who knows how long. I hadn't realized how heavy it was until I finally just put it down. That kind of clarity doesn't usually come without heartbreak. So what was the turning point for you?
If I may, it's interesting how bite-sized the world wants to make your life or your experiences when you are a public person. And I understand why. The totality of a life, someone's journey it's not clickbait material. And so you won't expect this, but the reason this really relates back to Nia and our friendship is because there was so much public fascination about, well, what is she? How does she identify? Explain. And they wanted to make it about this coming out, and part of me and part of Nia were like, has nobody been paying attention to like anything I've ever said since I've been on TV, or all the people I've kissed since I've been on TV? Like, what are we doing? So there was humor in it, certainly. There was absolutely, given again this rising fear-mongering, there was a real importance, I understood, for saying the words and saying them in a way where they could be both hopefully inspiring or freeing to someone else, but also to say all of us deserve to take up space and deserve to have a full spectrum of rights. But the thing that people didn't see behind the scenes was the journey to get there. And the vest wasn't just about identity. The vest was about society. The vest was about the expectation on women, the exhausting demand to be small, but not so small, to no matter what you do, you have a career, how dare you not have kids? You have kids, how dare you not have a career? You wait to consider getting married. You're a crone. You got married young. You must have been dumb and you didn't know what you were doing. It's just, we can't quite get it right. And what I had to come to terms with was that I'd carried certain traumas rather than push them back on the people who'd given them to me. I'd tried to make everybody happy. I'd lost my individual way, maybe in a way, because I'd prioritized community so much that I finally said, well, I guess it's time. And I guess it's time I do the thing everybody tells me to do. And I'll make the list and check the boxes. And everybody says, once you've done it, you'll be happy. And I checked all the boxes and I really wasn't happy. And I didn't know how to say that to anyone but Nia. And I didn't know how to say when people said, well, why did you get married? And why did you do this? I didn't know I would go through the next step, the family building stuff, by myself. I didn't know until it happened to me. And I didn't know how to say that. I didn't know how to deal with the shame and the kind of embarrassment that I'd been wrong, and that I'd been wrong really publicly. And I called my best friend, and she, if I may, I'm just making sure I'm allowed to say the thing, but she said, me too. And we both knew what was going on, obviously, with each other. We talk 100 times a day, but when I said, I think I have to be done, and in her own life and in her own world with her own young son, she said, I do too. I would never wish for someone else to be heartbroken. But to have my best friend in the world having her version of the same experience, and both of us saying we gotta put it down and we gotta try to make a new way. In the most profound way, I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew I wasn't doing something rash. I knew I'd literally exhausted every option. I'd gone to every therapy. I'd done every bit of the homework. And I had to just say, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to learn something, and based on that learning, make a new decision for your future. And so everybody wanted to make it about, the next person in my life, because the next person in my life was a woman. Plenty of people were shocked it wasn't Nia, by the way. I was like, she is my wife, just not like that. But, what people didn't understand was that the journey started, again, in a community of women. And there were two of us. And then there was a best friend from college. And then there was a woman I would eventually fall in love with. And then there was another friend, dealing with, will I stay or will I go because of addiction in her family with her husband. And the community of women who didn't go, really bad timing, you just had this whole big thing. They didn't lean out and critique. They leaned in and said, it's okay. Those women helped me take off 40 years of expectation and people pleasing and just trying to do it right because it hadn't felt right ever, no matter how hard I tried. And it was, yes, about stepping into that portion of my identity in a way, but what it really was in totality was a homecoming and a learning to honor myself. And I learned how to honor myself watching the strongest woman that I know and a group of the most impressive women we love honor themselves. I had the courage of that conviction because of what I was being shown in both love and example by the women in my life.
We're taking a short break over the holidays, but we're not leaving you empty-handed. Every Tuesday, we're sharing some of the best moments from 2025 to help set you up for a great new year. We'll be back with all new episodes on January 13th. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single one.